Good morning. I'd like to welcome all of you here um, to our second annual conference on Congressional Conference on Latin America. We want to thank our congressional sponsors, Congressman Bill Bray and Congressman Connie Mack, for their support and their assistance. We also want to welcome members of the Diplomatic Corps representing, including countries from Panama, Spain, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Venezuela. The purpose of this briefing is to raise awareness of the dramatic changes that have taken place in Latin America over the course of the last 10 years. Perhaps without our policymakers realizing it, the United States is slowly but surely being replaced by other countries such as China, Iran, and Russia as the dominant influence in the Western Hemisphere. Countries such as Brazil and Chile now have China as their major trading partner. Russia has sold billions of dollars of advanced weapons to Venezuela and China. And China recently made a commitment to loan $20 billion to Venezuela to prop up its sagging economy and boost its oil production. We have learned from the laptop computer of Raul Reyes, the slain leader of the FARC, which is the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, that this narco-terrorist organization was actively operating inside Ecuador, and President Correa of Ecuador refused to renew the lease on the American base at Manta last year and instead gave the deep water port to a Chinese shipping company. The Iranian government has now established close relations with Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Nicaragua, and has found a warm welcome in Brazil. What this all means and how these various trends interconnect for regional stability and U.S. national security is the basis for our briefing today. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Frank Gaffney, the founder and president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy, who has been a tireless leader, writer, and spokesman on behalf of the principles upon which this country was founded: freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Frank Gaffney.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether she actually introduced herself. That was Nancy Menges, who heads up the Menges Hemispheric Security Project at the Center for Security Policy. We are extraordinarily proud of this project named for Nancy's late husband, Dr. Constantine Menges, a true guiding light for, I think, most of us in the field of national security in general, and specifically with respect to hemispheric security, about which he knew a great deal and cared passionately. So it's a privilege to have Nancy working with us on this project and really serving now as the driving force behind not just this event, but a marvelous product called the America's Report, which is, I think, a go-to resource for what's happening in the hemisphere and documenting day in and day out some very, very significant trends, which we will be discussing here today with an extraordinary group of experts in various fields at both the macro level, regional, hemispheric level, and with respect to some of the key nations in the hemisphere. This is, as I think maybe Nancy mentioned, the second annual hemispheric briefing by the Menges Project and the Center for Security Policy, and I'm sorry to say that the report this year is going to be worse than it was last year in a number of respects. We will be getting into that in detail in two, as I say, very distinguished panels. But before we do, we are very privileged to have with us for at least a few minutes leading members of the United States House of Representatives who have made this event possible through their sponsorship and who, through their leadership on these issues, offer us hope that the benign or perhaps malign neglect that has been applied to too much of the hemisphere for too long will yield to a much more thoughtful, much more engaged, and certainly much more responsible policy on the part of the United States.